My name is Logan Sweet. I'm at Michigan Radio, and I'm here to find out how they determine what goes on the air.
Michigan Radio is actually 3 different radio stations. The combined signals reach most of the southern part of the Lower Peninsula. Most of the state's largest cities can tune into one of the stations. In 1 week, more than 500,000 people listen.
How do you decide what news you're going to cover?
Oh my goodness, that's a really, really good question. Every day, we at Stateside and here at Michigan Radio have a news meeting at 9 a.m. Some days it lasts 5 or 10 minutes, other days it goes for an hour. And all of our reporters and all of our producers and hosts all pitch different story ideas. So those are stories I think that some people feel really passionate about, other stories that kind of pique someone's interest and wants to question what's going on in their state. And then as a group, we all decide, well, what are the stories that are really important to follow, that we have been following, like the Flint water crisis? And then there's beat reporters, and their jobs are basically to just look at these one little things, and they know everything about these certain issues. So we have Detroit reporters, we have Grand Rapids reporter, we have a Flint reporter, folks who really know things about the auto industry, and those folks then use their sources and bring news stories to us. And then as a group, we decide what's the most important thing for the state to hear.
Michigan Radio has won many state, regional, and national awards for its reporting. The stories can range anywhere from covering the environment to questioning government leaders to investigating issues of safety. Each story requires a different approach.
When you are assigned a story, how do you start and how do you go about reporting it?
So it's going to be very different based on whether or not this is a story you've been covering for a while already or whether it's something that is brand new to you. So if it's brand new, in a lot of ways, you're going to just be casting as wide of a possible net as you can. You want to hear from as many people as you possibly can who know more about this. And it also means that you're going to be asking, you can't be afraid to ask the dumb questions. Be upfront with them about, I know very little about this, I need you to educate me. Mm-hmm. So it can feel like a lot when you're taking on a brand new story that you don't know anything about. Whereas if it's a story that you have been reporting all the small twists and turns in it, then you really have your sources there. You know it really well. You know exactly who to call, who to talk to, who the voices will be, what's at stake here, that kind of thing. So it's a very different process, but a lot of it is kind of the same basics. You're working the phones, you're out in the fields, you're talking to as many people as you possibly can. Yeah. So those things stay the same.
When you're accused of a crime, the first time a judge makes a determination on your liberty is during the arraignment.
Michigan Radio also has a talk show called Stateside. It began as a 4-day-a-week program with host Cynthia Canty, but recently expanded to Fridays with Lester Graham.
How do you decide what goes on the show?
Good question. Putting together an hour-long show, there are probably an infinite number of variables that go into it. We try to have something very topical, something that's going on right immediately in the news, the Flint water crisis, the Detroit public schools, bailout or funding issues, things like that. But we can't do a whole hour of all really serious news. It's just too hard on the listener. So we kind of mix it up. We mix it up with some academic studies that might be of interest to people in Michigan or coming out of Michigan universities. Some great little historical pieces on things that maybe something happened in Kalamazoo or Detroit, pieces of architecture, some mysteries, that type of thing. We're just trying to talk. There were hundreds of crows that were just found dead on railroad tracks in a small town in West Michigan, and so we want to talk to a scientist about what possibly happened there. And we really just kind of mix it up and move in between some serious news and to some light stuff. We kind of call it, if we want to feed people the spinach, we have to give them cookies too.
People can also access news stories online, which tends to have additional information and other stories that might not be heard on the radio.
How does online news coverage differ from news we hear on the radio, and why?
A lot of it doesn't differ. All of the stories that we do on air need to go online. Sometimes the treatment's a little bit different. Sometimes we're able to include more information online just because we have time limits on air that we don't have online. So you can include more background, more quotes from people. Obviously, there's the visual component to pictures and videos. But we also do some aggregation. We do, like yesterday, we live streamed the congressional hearing into the Flint water crisis. We have like a lot more flexibility online. And I mentioned aggregation, so there will be stories that other news outlets have done. We will, sometimes drop graphs in there that, clearly identify that that's where they're coming from, but that can add more context to a story that maybe we're working on for air, but we can get it up quicker online. Also, what was I going to say? Online is a better place for kind of like water cooler stories, like the dog that worked at the airport, with the goggles, or there was a speed skater video, viral kind of stuff that wouldn't necessarily make it on air. That is good for our online audience. And the audiences are different. We sort of treat them as we keep that in mind when we're doing stories, that our numbers tell us that the audiences are different audiences. There's not a whole lot of crossover.
Michigan Radio is considered a statewide news station, but many of its reporters also contribute to national outlets such as NPR. People who move away can also keep in touch with Michigan Radio thanks to online streaming, phone apps, and social media. Michigan Radio has a goal to make sure their listeners get the information and news they need in a way that makes them want to turn on the radio.